When was the last time you got to have an in-depth conversation
Never.
with a judge?
Never.
Well,
That's my point.
Oh,
Never.
Not with
Talk
any
to
of
a
them.
judge?
And
No.
that's-
No.
To tell them your side of the story, yeah. They just want to, say a bunch of things, about you
We're
at court.
helping you,
but
and
yeah.
thank you for your thoughts, and
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, we'll send you an automatic email and signed by an auto robot pen. So the issue is you don't have any representation.
No.
None. Zero. Zip. Now, I come from a different lifestyle than you guys probably do. And my family's been in this country generations, and I can't go talk to them either, unless I do it as media. But as an individual citizen, they don't have time. Here's the problem, people. To get your solution, you need to be able to go sit down with a assemblyman and say, look, Lois Capps did this terrible thing. It's hurting me. It's hurting my children. We need to be able to go sit down and have a coffee and say, look, I don't do drugs anymore. I'm clean and sober. They let me have my kids until I got clean and sober. Then they took them away for a dingling excuse. And now I'm paying child support for my own kids. You're virtually a slave, aren't you?
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like I have no rights, and and I was born and raised in this, United States. It's
Born and
supposed to be
raised
like-
here, and you have no
Yeah,
rights because
and
you
no
have
rights.
you have no justice in court. You saw that man William Christopher on the screen there
Yeah,
earlier, right?
I did.
6 years locked up, and they wouldn't give him a jury trial. They wanted him to cop a plea, and he says, "I can't cop a plea because I would be lying. The truth is, I'm innocent." So they made him sit in jail for 6 years. 5 years before I heard about it, and I didn't believe it. I said, this can't be true. And there's a woman, I'll mention her first name, Alice. Alice kept calling me and emailing, says, Wagner, check this out. Check this out. They're got this guy in a mental hospital, and they're pumping him up with drugs because he caught the judge tampering with the court record, literally taking 2 pages out of the court record that would have proved he was innocent, and they should have just released him and been done with it. But they wouldn't do that because he in jail was worth money, more federal funding.
Wow.
And that's what our whole state legislature did. This guy, Michael Warnken, we're going to show you to him in a minute. He got the solution. The solution is you don't have any representation. You're being taxed, and you have nobody to talk to. And the reason you don't is because each assemblyman represents about 500,000 people. They're only supposed to represent about 30,000. And they're trying to represent 500,000. 80 state assemblymen for almost 40 million people. There is no way. And that's why we have this tyranny. And with Lois Capps, did I say that? With Lois Capps, Lois, you really are crappy. You really are. And I've invited you to come on this show, and I wish you would, so I could tell you to your face how crappy you are. Do you think that's going to persuade her to come on the show, Anita?
No.
No.
She probably won't.
I think that would be the one thing that would get her on the show.
Yeah, come on in and tell me how wonderful you are and how you voted for all these bills that stole Juanita's children. And then when she cleans up, you take the kids and make her pay child. This is nuts, isn't it, Joyce?
It's disgusting.
What? Couldn't hear that.
It's disgusting.
Don't break the microphone. Anyway, the solution is, and we got to move on here because we got Gwen Woods waiting. Michael Warnken filed a federal lawsuit, and it's all about representation, people. It's about representation. You don't have any. 200 people were turned away from the new library that was built with free federal funding because they didn't have a room big enough. It was packed to the walls, and you can go on my YouTube and see that. But there were 200 other people didn't even go to the outside because they couldn't even find a parking place. And they started calling me later. Yeah, I was there, Bill. I was there. So I want to go to this tape and see this discussion I had with Michael Warnken, who filed a federal lawsuit, and he's about to file another one with an injunction to force them to redistrict so that we get more than 80. We get something like 800 or 1,000 assemblymen. So Juanita can go down the street and talk to her assemblyman. Marie can go talk to him and say, we got this problem. You got to put Judge Herman on trial because he didn't swear people in under oath. He lets lies be put on the record as if it was truth. Watch the tape. We'll be back in a few minutes. The show is Michael Warnken from Santa Barbara, who's got an interesting lawsuit he's filed in November. of 2008. Welcome to the show, Michael.
How you doing?
So you spent, what, 2 months, 6 months, 3 years researching this lawsuit?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I'm feeling like all in all it's about 5 years, probably in total.
5 years.
In total researching.
Researching. And what is this lawsuit? Do we see a copy of it?
Well, here's the copy of it right here.
This is just the bare pleading.
Yeah, that's the bare pleading. It doesn't even have the attachments to it.
This is only a half-inch thick, Michael.
Yeah, but unfortunately, this whole box here represents 4 copies of.
But with the whole box, it's like closer to a foot thick.
Yeah, it's easily that thick.
A foot thick. That's a big lawsuit. Why are you suing the governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger of California?
Well, it kind of goes back to Old English common law, where when you wanted to get apportionment put together properly, you sued the king, because technically he's the one who issued writs of election, and from that determined proper representation. It's a holdover. You do the same thing today. You either take a suit against the governor or you take a suit against the Secretary of State. So, you know, I've named both of them, but you go by order of power, so the governor's first.
So basically back in 1855, 54 era, they expanded the state legislature from 36 to 80. And we had 2 congressmen for the whole state.
Yes. That's,
and 80 state assemblymen.
Yeah.
Now it's 150 years later, we still only have 80 state assemblymen, but the population has gone up from...
Initially in 1848, we had the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and that set up the boundaries between California and Mexico. And after that, we formed our own constitution, and the constitution said that California's assembly will have 30 to 80 people. In 1850, we had the first apportionment of the assembly, which was roughly 36 people. And then in 1852, they moved to 63, and then to 1854, they went to 80. And the population was about 200,000. 200,000 for the entire state of California.
That's not even half of Santa Barbara County today.
That's correct, yes.
And we had 2 Congress critters then.
Two U.S. House members and 2 senators, and we had 80 assembly members.
80 assembly. Now it's a century and a half later.
Yes.
We've got 53 congressmen, soon probably to be 55 or more.
Yeah, that looks to be the trend.
And we still only have 80 assemblymen. So could one conclude that we are grossly underrepresented in the lower house of California's state assembly?
That's a fair statement. When you just look at it as...
How gross is the underrepresentation?
Well, when you look at a state-to-state basis, the second worst state is Texas, and they've got 1 rep for every 150 people, or 150,000 people. We have 1 rep for every 475,000 people. So we're 3 times worse than the second worst.
Wow. That's a big difference. What should the ratio be if we had maintained the same ratio they had 150 years ago with 80 assemblymen for 200,000? What would be the number today?
Well, when they did the increases, they maintained a ratio of about 1 for every 2,500 to 3,000 people. So 1 rep for every 2,500. And the founders even expected that. They said each U.S. House member should represent approximately 30,000 people. And they said for the lower chamber in each state, about 8 or 10 to 1 is what they suggested in the Federalist Papers. And I think it was Federalist 56 that said that.
Wow.
Yep.
So we would need a minimum of 3,000 state assemblymen.
Well, to get the ratio of 3,000 people to 1, you would need 12,000.
12,000?
12,000, yes.
Where would we hang them? From which chandelier in the assembly room? Where would they meet? In the Cow Palace?
Well, Arco Arena is not far from that.
The Arco Arena in Sacramento. I mean, seriously, people have a hard time believing you could have a state assembly of 12,000, but based on the population,
yeah,
it seems you're right.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is that when you look at the eastern states, they what happened with a number of them is when their chambers got what they felt was too big, they invoked Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution, and they split the state. In 1812...
That was which state?
Numerous states. Virginia and West Virginia, they split. Or in 1812, Massachusetts had 749 House members, and they split into Massachusetts and Maine.